students, academic staff members, and also to you, Jakob, our Vice Principal. For those of you who have not seen me in the induction day sessions or have communicated with me before, I'm Zoe Olds, Head of Academics, and part of the BMT College Research Evaluation Panel. It's an honor for me to start this week's workshops relating to Module 7, Research Methodology. I think when we think of research, we often think that it's merely the collection of information on a specific topic and reporting on the information we collected in a format such as an essay. And this is not completely wrong, but as you'll find out during the next couple of days, research is so much more, and it's essentially about the formulation of new knowledge. Mr. Pullman already covered what we will do during the course of this week and how our sessions will work. And just once again, just a reminder to keep your microphones on mute. And that just then brings me to the first presentation that I would like to share with you. In a nutshell, what is research? The goal of research is to create new knowledge or ideas. It starts off by observations and asking questions, and then formulating a research problem. Once you have your research problem that you have formulated, you will decide then on your research aims. What is it that you want to do during your research? And then you'll have to ask certain questions before you can start with the actual research. You as a researcher then have to develop certain methods to collect your data and process the data into research results or findings that has meaning so that you can make conclusions. And then at the end, very important part of research is to share your results and your findings of research with other academics that will then have a chance to observe what you have researched and reported on and ask questions again about the research that you have done. So it is actually a never-ending cycle, starting with observations, asking questions, and then taking the research process from there on. Some important terms that you will hear quite a lot for this module is your research topic. So that is the issue or the problem or the subject that you as a researcher is interested in and want to investigate. Then your research proposal, that is essentially the plan that shows us how you intend to conduct your research. So this is before you actually start off with your research, you need to have a plan in place. Then you'll end off your research with a research project report. This is the final product. So after you've collected your data and got the meaning and the findings of the data that you've collected, you will show us the whole process that you followed and report on the data and the findings of your research project. Once again, you'll just see the research process starts off with a research topic, formulating your problem, formulating objectives and aims, formulating your research questions, planning and drafting your research proposal, and then executing, controlling the research process, that's your data collection, and presenting and reporting on the research that you've conducted. We will just have a more in-depth look now at each step. At the first step, where you select your research topic, through observations such as scanning or reading through literature or an issue that you may face in the workplace, you'll see or observe possible problems that you need or would like to research. For example, you have noted that since more people from your department are working from home, since the outbreak of COVID-19, that the output or the productivity of some workers have declined, but the output or the productivity of other workers have remained the same or increased. So a possible topic that you will have is the impact of working from home on the productivity levels of employees. Once you have a topic or something of interest that you would like to find out a bit more, you have to collect background information to formulate your research problem. And this you'll do through a literature review. For this step, you need to go through quite a lot of articles, read up maybe in certain books there will be literature that will be relevant, but I find the journal articles that are current and recent might be the best source of information for you to do your literature review on. For example, if you have a research problem that relates to a financial industry, then you might have to read up a little bit more about the financial industry, the characteristics, problems and unique requirements of this industry to gain further insight into your field of study. This is purely because each industry is different. So someone in a financial industry might have different types of stresses than someone in an educational or a manufacturing type of sector. So what you will be doing in this step is to put your research problem into perspective. With the third step, formulation of the research objective, you need to formulate an overall goal for your research. So this is what you want to achieve with your research. And you will break that up into primary and secondary objectives. So your primary objective is your main goal, and the secondary objective is just the supporting goals to support that primary or the main goal you have for your research. For example, a primary objective might be to investigate the impact of working from home on the productivity levels of employees of an accounting firm. So you see that is quite broad. And then your secondary objective is a little bit more specific, where you might say to determine the factors influencing productivity positively for employees of an accounting firm who are working from home. With a secondary objective number 2, you might say to determine the factors influencing productivity negatively for employees of an accounting firm who are working from home. Once you have your objectives, you need to formulate your research questions. This will relate to your aims of your study. So you can't ask questions that doesn't relate to the overall goals or aims of your study. For example, let's look at research question 1. Remember, your first objective was to determine the factors influencing productivity positively for employees of an accounting firm who are working from home. And research question 1 relating to that is what factors influence productivity positively for employees of an accounting firm who are working from home. With your 5th step, you will start with your research proposal. Remember, that is the plan of how you intend to do your research. Firstly, you will have to identify existing literature that contains information relevant to your research problem. You will identify the type of data that you will need. You might want to do a survey through SurveyMonkey, or get data through questioning or interviewing people. And you need to determine how you will collect your data and from who you will collect it. So who is it that you want to interview? Who is it that you want to complete your questionnaires or your survey? And then you need to choose how you will analyze the data that you plan to collect. Are you planning to use an Excel spreadsheet, or are you planning to use, for example, on SurveyMonkey, there are quite nice analytics that it gives to you already, and that might be the way that you plan to analyze your data. Like I said, with a literature study, your examples of sources can include journals, reports from research institutes, published dissertations and theses, conference papers, conference proceedings, textbooks, and the internet, choosing reliable sources. And important, use recent publications. My rule usually is not something that's older than 10 years old, and that's already a stretch. So I would suggest that you use something more recent than that. With data collection, we will have a little bit more to say tomorrow when we talk about qualitative and quantitative research, but your data can either be numerical or non-numerical, verbal or non-verbal, and there's different ways that you can collect your data. For example, your questionnaires and your surveys and your samples. So that's a subset of data that you obtain from the larger population. For this step, it is very important that you study your prescribed textbook for qualitative data gathering techniques, that's chapter 4 and 5, and quantitative research techniques in chapter 8 and 9. as well as the business statistics support guide. Once you have determined the research process that you want to follow, you can write your research proposal. That is a written statement of the research design. It includes your statement explaining the purpose of the study. It outlines the procedures to be followed in the research process. And once again, there are guidelines available that shows you possible outlines of a research proposal that you can use and refer to. We will go through the guideline document in our second session. And then step 6 is where you actually collect your data. So you firstly had your plan, and now you are executing your plan. Collecting the data in the way that you have said you are going to collect it from the sample that you have identified. And then you need to process the data that you have collected. For example, if you have questionnaires or surveys, you might have to input that data in something like Excel if you're not using SurveyMonkey. Or if you have interviewed respondents or participants, you will have to go through those interviews and identify certain themes related to your research and that is of interest or something that's significant, and then evaluate and interpret the data results. So basically, what does your results mean? Step 7, you need to present your research results. This is your last step of the research process. So this is where you will use the information from your research proposal in the first 3 chapters of your report, and then add new information that you've obtained after data collection in your chapter 4. And you will end off with conclusions and recommendations in chapter 5. And once again, we have guidelines available on a possible format of how you can structure your research report. Okay, so the first document that you actually have to submit as part of this module is your topic submission. It will look something like this, with your first page, with your general details, the topic. So this is the working title of the research project. Remember, this is what we need to evaluate, the research evaluation panel. So we will approve it, or it might change slightly as you progress with your research. You'll also indicate, as you see in the framework, it gives you a little bit of guidelines in terms of how much information you should add to each section in this document. For example, your problem statement is this is what you plan to investigate in your research project, and it should be about 2 to 3 sentences long. Then your purpose and rationale, your target population, the sample size, and references, of which you have to include 5 for this document. So this is then your topic submission framework that you will use, and this is the very first document that you have to submit so that we can approve your topic. It is very important that you do this because you can only progress with your proposal and your project once you have an approved topic from the college. Then our second framework that we have available is for your research proposal. Remember, this is your plan. So after we've approved your topic, you will start with your research proposal. You will insert the name of the approved research topic on the very first page, as well as your personal details. You will also have a table of content outlining what you have included in your research proposal. And once again, it also gives you just a layout or possible layout that you can use to report, to give us an indication of how you plan to conduct your study, which will include your introduction, a literature review, the aim or rationale for the study, your problem statement, your research methodology. This is how you plan to collect your data and the sample that you will use. Data analysis, this is how you plan to analyze your data. Any ethical considerations or any ethical issues that you think might arise that you have to deal with, you have to write about here. We will speak a little bit more about ethical considerations in our second session. You also have to tell us in your plan, what is your timeline? How do you plan on completing your project? And any anticipated problems that you can think of, This could be anything from maybe struggling to get 6 to 8 participants in a qualitative study. What will you do to ensure that you have the adequate amount of participants? And then your references, you need 10 references for your proposal. And then any information that you want to add, such as a covering letter or a permission letter, you will add after your references and the appendices. The third document and the third submission that you will have to then submit is the research project, in which you report on the actual research that you have conducted. So what you should be seeing now in front of you is the template or a framework. And remember, this is a possible framework that you can use to report your research on. So once again, you'll have your approved title for the research project and your personal details on the very first page, a table of contents, very important, and a declaration in which you declare that the work that you've submitted is authentic and your own. That's also, again, just an example of a declaration. So you can go and have a look also in the guidelines document of examples of declarations. Acknowledgement, so anyone that you would like to acknowledge or maybe give thanks to, you will include in the acknowledgements. Abstract, just a short description of what your study or your report is about. Your very first chapter will be an introduction to your study. Remember, again, this will be a lot of the information that you've used in your research proposal will be included in this chapter here. I'm not going to read through all the topics, but you can see from here what you need to insert, and we also give you more or less guidelines on how much information you should add so that you know how long your document should be. Your research project should not be less than 30 pages, and that should be quite easy, because if I just look at my framework, is already 27 pages. So you need to, your report should not be less than 30 pages. In chapter 2, we'll have your literature review. So this is the findings of other researchers. This chapter will look very different for each student depending on the subject or the topic that you've chosen. For example, my headings and subheadings, if I've chosen to work on wellness, will be very different from someone that have chosen to research something related to productivity. So once again, just make sure that you've structured this chapter with the introduction and end it off with a summary, and insert your relevant headings and subheadings. And this will all relate to the topic that you have chosen to research. Chapter 3, your research methodology and research design. Remember, this is how you, the way that you intend, or the way that you had collected your data and the way that you did conduct your research. So remember now, this is past tense. When we get to the actual report, you report on what you have done. Once again, we'll start off with the introduction. You will tell us what design or paradigm you've used, what strategy you use, who was your target population, how did you collect your data, what research instrument did you use. This will be, for example, your survey that you've used, or a questionnaire, or was it in an interview. Then you'll also have to report on the trustworthiness of the research design if you're doing a qualitative study, or reliability and validity if it's a quantitative study. And you will insert applicable headings and subheadings. You'll also have to report on how you eliminated bias, ethical considerations, and you will then end off this chapter with a summary. In chapter 4, this is where you report on the data that you've collected. This presentation of data will also look different depending on the method that you've chosen to collect your data and the instruments that you've chosen to use. There is a very nice example of a research project that the actual student has completed. that we have made available previously. It is on the virtual campus, so I suggest that you have a look at that example to see how a chapter 4 should actually look like. Possible topics that you will have to include or headings is your interview participation rates, if you had interviews, for example, or if it was questionnaires that was completed, what was the participation rate of participants for the questionnaire. Then presentation of data. Here you might want to use tables and figures to present the data in a more visual way. And you will discuss what your results or findings actually mean. And end off with a summary again. In chapter 5, it's your conclusions and recommendations. So in this chapter, you will have to relate what you found in your data collection with the literature review that you've conducted. So you might find something that's contrasting to the literature that you have included in your study, or something that supports the literature review. So this is what you need to then include in chapter 5. How did you achieve your research objectives? So you will insert again your objectives that you had, and then describe to us how you've achieved these objectives. You'll end up with a conclusion, recommendations for future studies, and speak about any limitations of the study. A limitation could possibly be that that your research samples should have been a bit larger in order for you to generalize it to the general population. Go and have a look also at the example that we saved for you if you are unsure about limitations and recommendations and need some guidance with conclusions also for studies. You will have to include about 20 references, a minimum of 20 references in the APA 7th edition style for your research project report, and then any appendices that you've used. For example, if you've used a questionnaire that's structured to interview candidates, you will include that for us. And your covering letter that you ask, for example, participants permission to participate in the study. And if you had to ask consent from a company to use the people working there as respondents or participants, just give us some information there. Once again, very nice examples in the example that we saved for you in on the virtual campus. Okay, lastly, I'm just going to quickly go through your submission dates for Module 7. Okay, we've already spoken about the steps, so I'm not going to go through all of this again. There's quite a lot of repetition of information, which I think is good for you if you are a little bit unsure. So you can go through this document. The important part is your due dates. Your topic submission, by no later than 22 October, you need to send us the topic that is of interest to you, that you want to research. You can use the framework or the template that we have made that is available to do so. Your final research proposal submission must be submitted on the 12th of January, and your final research report submission is due on the 25th of May 2021. Okay, so something important that I just want to talk about here is that these dates are final dates, but there will be dates. Well, let me start off with saying that based on the topic that you are selecting and the way that you are planning to conduct your study, you'll be assigned to a specific research assistant supervisor. That research assistant supervisor will be in communication with you from the time that your topic has been submitted to speak to arrange with you dates that you can possibly submit draft documents to her to go through before it is time for you to submit your final documentation. So this is important so that if we find that you are not on the right track, that we can guide you and help you to get back on the right path, so that when you submit your final documentation, that you get a good evaluation outcome. So you will basically have your topic submission, and then you will submit a draft of your research proposal to your research assistant supervisor. Based on the draft, there will be some recommendations made and given back to you so that you can submit your final proposal by the 12th of January. After your proposal, you will receive feedback, and based on that feedback, you will continue with your research report. Your research assistant supervisor will then communicate with you dates that you have to submit a draft to her so that she can go through your report before the 25th of May when you have to submit your final report for marking. Then just some possible outcomes of the research report. So this is now the final project that you've submitted. It can be approved as is with a final mark or approved with minor adjustments. So then your supervisor will let you know about the small changes that you will have to make, and then a final mark will be allocated to you. If it needs major adjustments, the student needs to then make these changes and submit the changes to your supervisor, and also again a final mark will be allocated and your approved after the approved adjustments were made. It can also mean that your report is rejected and because of significant weaknesses, and then we will give you some steps for additional or remedial action and time also in which you need to go and make those changes. Then your attempts to complete the research report. If you fail to submit your report, you'll have to apply to the Academic Council for extension of submission, which may incur additional costs. So if you have done nothing and you've waited for the date to go past, and then you'll have to actually pay for an extension because we'll have to guide you through the whole process again of topic submission, a proposal, and actually the report as well. If you submit a report that just requires some adjustments, we will allow you a couple of days or a couple of weeks, depending on how much changes you need to do. So the maximum of time that we will give you to make those changes, if it's major changes that are required, is 2 months. And if you fail to submit your research report, it will mean that you will not achieve the qualification. So just very important, be in contact with the college, with your lecturer and your research assistant supervisor to make sure that you do not miss out on the due dates or on this if you are unsure of any of the steps that you have to follow, please rather contact the college so that you don't fail your qualification based on this research report. Towards the end of the week, we'll also make available an informal learning activity, which will look like a formative assignment. It will have about 50 short little questions that you can complete. And that's just to help you work through the study material so that you understand concepts such as validity and reliability. What is the difference between quantitative studies or qualitative study? It does not count any marks. But you must attempt it at least before you can submit your research topic. So towards the end of the week, Friday, you will have access to this informal learning activity. Please attempt it and then start off with your topic submission, which is due on the 22nd of October. Okay, that was now quite a lot of information from me. I see we have some time left for this session. So if there are any questions now, please raise your hand and then we can help you with those questions. Okay, Joseph, I see a hand from Joseph Chabalala. You can unmute yourself, Joseph, and then state your question, please.
Thank you to give me an opportunity. But the question that I wanted to just to check now, I see the submission date. You are talking about 25 May 2021. Is it correct or was it a typo?
It is a typo. Thank you for pointing it out. It will be corrected before I make the slides available. That's 25 May 2022. Okay, thank you, Joseph. Hildegard, I see you also have your hand up. You can unmute yourself.
Yes, it's with regards to the submission of the topic. You are giving the final date as the 22nd of October. By when will we know what is the like submitting beforehand? for the lecturer to go through it and give advice. When will we know which date that will be and who will be assigned to which student?
Okay, thank you, Hildegard. With regards to the topic submission, that will be your first document that you submit to us. So we will not give you guidance before the time on the topic submission. You will receive feedback on the topic submission with possible changes that you have to make. And then at that point, we will assign a research assistant supervisor to you. And that depends very much on the topic that you selected and the way that you intend to complete your studies, the research method that you want to use. So with your topic submission, that's why it's very important then to join the session on Wednesday and ask your questions about the topic there and use the framework available as well as the guidelines. Complete your topic submission and then you'll get feedback on that. So it's only on the proposal and on the actual research project that we will have a research assistant supervisor that will give you, intermittent guidance basically as you progress with your report or your proposal. Okay, thank you, Hildegard.
Can I come in now on that?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, Joseph.
Mine is just a concern with regard with these workshops. The timing, I think, is not good because most of us here, we are working. And for an example, my meeting will start from 8 o'clock until 11 o'clock. So if every day I have to leave my work duties because I have to attend this and it's so important, what are the possibilities for this session if they can start at lunchtime so we can be able to join? We can even see the number of participants here in this group. We are only 21. Actually, I can say we are only 15. The majority is lectures here. Is it possible for us maybe to start at 12 o'clock or 1 lunchtime rather than 10 o'clock? Because most of us by the time we are engaged at our work application. Thanks.
Thank you, Joseph. I think for now the time will remain as scheduled because we also have to schedule our academics schedules in. But like we said, we will have a look at the quality of the recordings to make it available for those that really could not attend. And we will also have the slides available and the frameworks available. And you are also welcome afterwards to contact the lecturer or members of the research evaluation panel if you have questions and you feel that you need maybe a one-on-one session with someone. I hope that answers your question, Joseph.
Partially so, it did. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Paula, you can ask your question now.
Good morning, everybody. The submission, the topic submission date is the 22nd of October, which I see as per our calendar. There is actually module 6 formative that we are going to be required to submit. So this actually, I'm raising it as a concern because we are busy, as previously stated by one of the students. We are hectically busy at work and some of us cannot really catch up. So if we do have a duplicate on the same date, submission on the same date, I just think it will be a bit tricky. I don't know, maybe if it's just fine, but I see it might affect us somehow. Thank
you, Paula. Yes, it might be a little bit tricky, but for that, the formative assignments has been open for quite a while. And I think knowing now in advance that you have 2 submissions due in the same week or more or less in the same time, that you should now use time management skills to plan around it to make sure that you can submit both formative 6 as well as your topic submission. So my advice is to don't delay until the actual due date to start off with either the topic submission or with the formative 6, but rather do it now. You have about 2 weeks left yeah, a little bit more than 2 weeks left, 2 to 3 weeks left to work on both of those. Thank you, Paula. Is there any other questions? Okay, Mr. Pullman, I think we may end the session now.
Okay, thank you everybody for joining us.